Welcome to this seventh episode of ESI, a webinar series from ERIA where we discuss about how entrepreneurship, startups, and innovation are contributing to shape, this new normal, the post-pandemic recovery across ASEAN and the +6. I'm Giulia Maremarsan, Area Director for Strategy and Partnership, and I'm here together with TJ Oy from Curated Connectors and Lina Maulidina, also from ERIA, to co-host this webinar series, where we discuss a lot about entrepreneurship and startups, as I was saying before. And apologies for starting a few minutes late. We are just trying to solve some borderless issues, technological issues. And this is what entrepreneurs do. So we are very much in line with the discussion we are going to have today, because we are going to discuss about, as I was mentioning, borderless entrepreneurship. Thanks to the internet and digital technologies, nowadays, many entrepreneurs and startuppers are just born international and global. This is a very interesting new feature of entrepreneurship ecosystem, also affecting ASEAN and East Asia. And this is what we want to discuss today. Also because on one hand, the pandemic is providing a lot of issues, cross-border travels, restriction, and so on and so forth. On the other hand, because many of us are moving activities online, in a sense, it could even be easier to be connected cross-border with other fellow entrepreneurs, with other colleagues across Asia and beyond. But as we know, being global, being international also brings along issues such as, having to regulate and having to navigate and understand different regulations, different rules, different complexity related to being operational in different markets with consumers having different attitudes and behaviors. So this is really what we want to discuss today with our fantastic experts and entrepreneurs on the panel. TJ will introduce them in detail in a minute, but let me welcome them and thank them. Thank you very much, Lauren from Vietnam, Hewon from Korea, Jude from Thailand, and Wisnu from Indonesia. We have, a very diverse set of entrepreneurs and countries represented today, as we always like to do. Before starting the real conversation, just a couple of reminders. Please keep your microphone on mute during the entire duration of the webinar, but we have a chat box. Feel free to use it. We want this conversation to be as interactive as possible, and use it, please, also to ask questions to the speakers, because we will go back to your questions towards the end of the webinar. And keep an eye on the chat box also, because we are going to share a couple of links you may find useful. A link to our YouTube channel, where you can find all the previous recording of the previous episode, and some key messages that emerged. To talk 1 minute or two about this publication at the end of this episode. And now, just let me give the floor to TJ. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Julia. And once again, thank you all for joining us this afternoon. My name is TJ from Curated Connectors based in Singapore. I will be co-hosting this session this afternoon. And let me quickly, jump in to introduce our speakers. We've always, like what Julia said, always strive to make it as dynamic and as regional as possible. So our very first speaker is Mr. Laurent Tam Nguyen, co-founder and general manager of Digital Mekong, based in Vietnam. He is a senior business development and marketing specialist with over 30 years of experience, having founded, managed businesses, as well as leading marketing business development operations in ASEAN and France. He moved to Vietnam in 2007, right after the country joined the World Trade Organization. And he has been based in Ho Chi Minh City since, has founded 2 companies, which has included Digital Mekong, a virtual marketing agency helping companies developing brand business development strategies and really leveraging on freelancing talents across Vietnam, France, Portugal. Today, he has a global clientele from diverse industries. And with Digital Mekong, he has also been acting as a Chief Marketing Officer, CMO, on demand, allowing companies to build their marketing foundations and allowing the teams within those companies to be able to do things in a different way, price efficient way. And he currently assists numerous law firms in our region to transform their business development capabilities and brand. Now, Laurent is a very enthusiastic believer in the future, not just of Vietnam, but also of ASEAN. So thank you for joining us this afternoon. I'll quickly move on to our next speaker. She is Ms. Rahe Won, Engagement Manager with Techstars based in Seoul, Korea. Her role is really to help founders business development opportunities, to help them to develop opportunities by connecting them to global networks. She has a wealth of experience in the startup ecosystem, having been a founder herself, now supporting founders. And her current work, she also was working as in project management in a local accelerator focusing on ESG sectors. When she set up her own company, which was a design thinking based kids educational content provider, where it had that focus on children in marginalized areas. She is passionate, in supporting founders in helping the Asian startup ecosystem. And from her own passion is also that heart for social mission-driven startups. So thank you, Hye Won, for joining us this afternoon. And our third speaker is Mr. Jirut Watum. He is Technology Strategy Partner under the chemicals business of SCG, the Siam Cement Group, and also partner of Sprint Accelerator in Thailand. Jirut is an innovation strategist, looking at new growth within the chemicals industry, scouting for new technologies from the petrochemicals, materials, and packaging sectors. 4 years ago, he co-founded Sprint Accelerator Thailand with academic and corporate partners with the aim to create an ecosystem to support science and engineering-based startups, especially those in early stage phase. Sprint has worked with more than 40 companies today, several of whom are still standing strong and growing despite the current pandemic. Startups interested to expand their business in Thailand, you're invited to connect with Jirut after this program. And our final speaker from Indonesia is Wisnu Nugrahadi, CEO and co-founder of Sampingan. It is a one-stop workforce management solution that provides equal job access to workers and also seamless workforce management for enterprises. Together with his other co-founders, they aim to be the largest and most trusted workforce solution in Indonesia. Sampingan has partnered with more than 850,000 temporary and permanent workers, over 150 companies of all sizes, with a presence in more than 80 cities in Indonesia. Prior to starting his own company, Wisnu was former head of operations at GoLife and senior manager of operations at Gojek. I think everyone here knows what Gojek is, the ride-hailing and on-demand service startup unicorn in Indonesia. He subsequently joined Antler's inaugural program and became the first founder invested by Antler. So join me to welcome all our speakers this afternoon. Without further ado, we want to dive in now. We want to talk to them. We want to hear from them their thoughts about borderless entrepreneurship, what it's all about, what does it mean to them. So let me start off first with Laurent. Laurent, perhaps you could first share with us what led you to start your business and why being borderless was the way to go for you. The floor is yours, Laurent.
Thanks, CJ. Thanks, CJ, for this introduction. Long introduction. I hope that people will not think I'm 100 years old after that. Thanks, Lina and ERIA and Julia for having me. It's a great topic. I'm very excited to be part of it today. So to address your question, to be honest with all of you, 14 years ago, I had no clue what borderless means. I don't even know if borderless was part of my vocabulary. I'm French, so that may explain this situation. But at that time in Vietnam, 14 years ago, our intuition was to go to create an agile marketing agency able to address the vast needs of entrepreneurs and SME market, which in ASEAN region is often correspond to above 90% of the business activities of this country. So the market is huge. And at that same time, I noticed in Vietnam and in other countries of the ASEAN region that there was a lot of very talented freelancers that were working on their own without any really strategy, etc. So we decided to create an agile virtual marketing agency able to address these needs, work and leverage on the talent of very talented freelancers, and be able at the same time to offer agile, efficient pricing solutions for SMEs. So this is the genesis of Digital Mekong. And I have to say that it's still the case today. So since our inception, we still work with a core team of project manager, and we work with an ecosystem of freelancers. So by essence, I would say we were not borderless, but we were born virtual. Okay. And we became borderless when we started to serve our clients outside Vietnam through Skype at that time, traveling, of course. But then borderless development, I have to say, have completely accelerated since COVID. So now, as you mentioned yourself, TJ, we have one art director in Portugal. We're launching right now our operations in Europe. We serve clients almost all over the world in US, Europe, and ASEAN. And I have really to say that COVID has been a big opportunity. And I don't say that because digital has really become part of our everyday life. But what I've noticed is that the client know now that digital is the way to go, and they're not afraid to do business that way. So for us, if I summarize our modest experience, I would tend to say we were born virtual, and borderless is our natural evolution and direction.
Thank you so much, Laurent. Very interesting. I've taken note of a point which I hopefully will be able to touch on a bit later. Let me move on to Haewon. Thank you for joining us. Haewon, can you start us off by sharing a bit with us, what do you do? And also in your scope of work, the general observations of how entrepreneurs have gone borderless, especially in recent years. Haewon, the floor is yours.
Thank you, TJ. Thanks for having me, and thanks for such great introduction of me. Yeah, I think it's more than what I really did or I'm doing, but really exciting. Yes, just giving you a little bit of myself briefly. I'm, working as engagement manager, working with a handful of founders out there, like global founders of our Techstars portfolio companies, by connecting them to our global network. So we don't really limit those network like only corporations, investors, or some of the institutions actually giving the real supports to the founders, but it's actually really vague and broad. But my job is more about to just connect them to the corporate partners that we work with. So my answers to your question would be based on or a little bit limited to that area. And to be honest, I'm based in South Korea, but my work doesn't, limit or is not really limited within this area. So I think my perspective is not really necessarily tied to this local, startup ecosystem. And I guess it's really helpful because we're talking about the borderless entrepreneurship. Yes, so that's about me. And what I've witnessed recent years. Yes, COVID is something accelerated borderless entrepreneurship for sure. But even before that, I could see quite a lot of founders are actually aiming to do their business borderless. I could see quite a lot of borderless entrepreneurship out there. When we are talking about the borderless entrepreneurship, from my perspective, we can touch on those two things. doing the business borderless and also teaming up borderless, or even more than that. In those two areas, I can see active movement and changes for sure. So I think we are sort of in the peak and we are expecting more borderless entrepreneurship from now on. So that's like the general sort of perspective that I can share with you. And just going back to the company that I'm working at right now, Techstars, actually describe ourselves as a global network working with global founders. So how do we offer our supports to the founders are really interesting. I think it could be some backup explanation to talk about this borderless entrepreneurship. We are not only investing, but also giving supports, global network for founders to do their business borderless. Maybe if we have more chance to deep dive about this approach later, I think I can go further. But based on that, what I can say is founders actually come up with their business ideas, maybe intentionally or unintentionally doing their business borderless. But because, you know, we are living in the world so well connected, meaning that you can actually experience like culture of the other parts of the world right here whenever you want, because, you know, all the channels, all the let's say channels are available for you, easy to access. So that kind of technologies where the customer's needs actually bring up the founders or the startups actually come up with more borderless approach. That's like the big trends that I can read out there. And also, how can I say? Business models and technologies are actually supporting such ideas. And I think I should talk about the investor's perspective. Investors also read the trends, and investors also see more potential, not within a very limited market, but, you know, prefer the companies which can scale up their business borderless out there. So I think those kind of things matter and actually accelerate each other to come up with more borderless entrepreneurship for sure. And also, I think I need to talk about the team as well. I mean, now these days, we don't actually need to gather around doing the work together at like, you know, at the same place, right? So I guess that actually gives more opportunities to do borderless entrepreneurship, meaning that you know, remote work is regarded as a very common way of working. Me, myself, working remotely. And I believe quite a lot of startups out there doing remotely, which were regarded one of very unique way, but now it's really common. And actually that, you know, drive more of borderless entrepreneurship, you know, to bring up more efficiencies in operations and by, you know, hiring or working with great talented people out there. So that's like what I'm reading and what I've witnessed, you know, based on my experience.
Thank you so much, Hye-won. Interesting sharing, because you've gone beyond just, you know, from the entrepreneur's point of view, but also from the other side, you know, what investors are looking for. And I think really with global connectivity, you know, what can be the future for entrepreneurs, especially when they're forming a team. You don't have to look local. You can now go global. Yeah. So thank you so much for sharing. Let me move on to Jirut in Thailand. Please do share with us, you know, what made you start Sprint, and then a little bit more about your role within the Sprint Accelerator. So Jirut, over to you.
First of all, I think I have to thank TJ and team again for like really invite me here to join this beautiful channels and let me speak and maybe inspire some of the current entrepreneur who would like to expand themselves to beyond border of your own original. Myself, actually wear two hats. One is a corporate side, so I work for the corporate, looking out for a new startup. And at the night time, I wear like startup side. So I with my colleague who met in another lot of startup event, and we identified that in Thailand 5 years ago, there's still a gap for like a startup actually from research background. So researcher who like want to commercialize their product is finding it hard for them to get into the market. So we get the both academic and also a few corporate and try to say, hey, let's build ecosystem for and make it available for those type of people who maybe not like fit well with the other types of accelerator that focusing on the software or app development that like they speak differently on different language and move in like a different pace of product development. So we start on that, and at the beginning we didn't think we're gonna be like borderless accelerator, because we thought like, oh, with the 4 or 5 people, maybe we just focus with Thai researcher, Thai startup. But once we start, we actually learn by ourselves that entrepreneurs themselves are actually borderless by nature. So I see like none of them thinking just like with their own little space. They want to expand and want to solve a much bigger picture. So I think I think I see it's kind of like a driving force for all entrepreneurs in their nature, try to go much beyond their starting point. We have seen a kind of like interesting case that we got a startup that applied to join our program from Russia, which we didn't advertise, or we didn't have any kind of like network working in Russia, because it's far away from what we can original thought. And then we just say, hey, why not we like try to accept them if they want to be in part. So that may be interest. So we have them, and then at the end we able to like help connect them to do some business locally in not in Bangkok but in tourist space in Pattaya, which is a nice case. And we have seen this thing already been borderless since like before the pandemic. So after the pandemic, what I can see and project is going to be much, I would say, easier and quicker and more efficient for those entrepreneurs to mobilize themselves, as Hewan said, like finding the team or be localized in somewhere that you never thought that you're going to operate the business than original from your business model canvas. So I see it's coming, even for the company, the startup that we normally facing, which is a deep tech, which is normally you need something physical. For us, I still see like it still be mixed in terms of both physical and like digital. But digital would help those kind of a company to expand beyond like their expectation from the first phase. I left that for now, and then we can carry on in the Q&A.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you so much, Jared. Yeah. Vishnu, let's move to Indonesia. In a country that's as vast as Indonesia, I found it interesting because I look at it as borderless entrepreneurship taking on an even slightly different meaning, especially given that your company Sampingan has a presence in more than 80 cities. Maybe if you could share with us a little bit about the business, and then also what are your views on this concept of borderless entrepreneurship? Over to you,
Sure.
Vishnu.
Sure thing. Thanks, DJ. Yeah, so a bit about Sampingan is, we're a fully digital staffing company, and we essentially utilize technology to recruit, manage, and retain workers across 80 cities remotely, helping companies to capture the data that they need to make business decisions, and at the same time, ensuring that trust is established both ways. And yeah, I definitely think that you can say handling Indonesia is the same as handling a business in multiple countries at once. We're a nation that comprises of 17,000 islands, 270 million people, and over 800 languages spoken. It wasn't even until 50 years ago that we really started using one language, and even then, access to knowledge has not been equal due to the logistic challenges that we have with our complex geography. We've definitely seen that the use of technology to democratize the knowledge has been improving quite rapidly. And we see that as we continue to reduce that gap, we've been able to access more higher quality workforce in even smaller cities. As the gap reduces, I would say that the next question is on accessing these workforce and ensuring that employers have the same visibility towards employees who are hundreds of kilometers away as you would to those that is sitting right next to you. And I think that's the problem that we're trying to solve right now. But overall, I think this sets a more level playing field for people in smaller cities. And at the same time, it gives the right incentives for companies, to explore and invest in this option, since the wages tiering and levels is much lower in these smaller cities. Yeah.
Thanks very much for sharing, Vishnu. If you just hold on, because as we enter into round two, I would start off with you. But before we do that, just a shout out to our participants. Feel free to put in your questions into the chat box. Yeah, I already see a few questions that have been posed. Thank you so much. And also, if you have any questions for any of our speakers, please feel free to put them in the chat box. If our speakers are free to respond to you, they may also do so through the chat box as well. So let me come back to you, Vishnu. I think you had shared a little bit in terms of what I was going to ask you, but perhaps you could just share a little bit more. And that is, how do you see then borderless entrepreneurship really shaping the startup ecosystem in Indonesia, especially as we look beyond the pandemic, in a post-pandemic recovery phase? Yeah, if you could share your thoughts, please.
Sure thing. I think there's two main objectives that we'll continue to see. The first one is, as mentioned, relates with the knowledge, access to knowledge. And this would be through the via experienced talents. So before, for startup companies in Indonesia, I think the main challenge to get these experienced talents from the United States or India is to convince them to essentially move to Jakarta. Right now, I guess more companies are now open to have their employees to sit in anywhere in the world, and that actually helps us to also recruit people who has had experience in these fields, and to train the people that we have today sitting in Jakarta and across Indonesia to the level that we need them to be. I think, and the second objective would be to for companies to reduce cost, I guess, and this is more on the administrative or laborious work. And there comes the question on why would companies in other countries with higher salary and wages, why would they have those activities running in their countries where you can outsource these jobs to countries like Indonesia, Vietnam, and India? And we're starting to see that technology bridges that gap of ensuring that you have the right visibility, you can establish trust with all these employees, and I guess we'll definitely see some interesting things coming up even after the post-pandemic. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Vishnu. Very interesting sharing that you've done. Jared, back to you in Thailand. how do you see, similar question, how do you see borderless entrepreneurship shaping the startup ecosystem in Thailand? Because even within Southeast Asia, country by country, the ecosystem is different because the culture is different, the people are different. So from your perspective in Thailand, how do you see borderless entrepreneurship shaping the future? Over to you, Jirut.
Yeah, so I think is quite clear. When I look at the ecosystem, as you point, like if different country, they might have different types of character. But the good thing of having borderless, I mean, people can like move or establish their business, and they can come and do some competition freely everywhere they want, right? One of the good things that shaping, I mean, total economic would be, drive into the better standard. That's what I like to put as a pinpoint. Like once you get the new higher standard, I would say it will bring up other types of ecosystem within as well. So I would have seen like, for example, back to my accelerator, if I already got, Thai, local Thai, joining the program, I would have seen like the character or the way or the energy within the program would be one way. But once we mix with people from different culture, different thought, foreigners from Russia, so people, try to, catch up each other. Otherwise, they cannot compete within the same ecosystem. So I would say, for sure, they would bring the economic, they would shape the ecosystem for startup to be the better level. Because I have seen something in the chat, like people start asking about when you have borderless, how you gonna having like a tax, how is labor law, everything become very different, and each country have such a different types of set of the law. But I think at the end, this will, to keep country up into the competition, to attract people to generate the borderless. So everyone have to move, everyone have to set a new rule, everyone have to come up with a new standard that at the end, hopefully it will make the borderless become, seamless. So no border at all at the end. Especially in ASEAN, we try to, we try to make, the economic zone. We try to do lots of things, but I think this still not a seamless connection. We still have slight barriers in each other country. So hopefully, this kind of the movement or this kind of pandemic will create, will lower the barrier and make it seamless connection. All right.
Thank you so much, Jirut. I like what you shared about really it opens the doors for friendly competition, if I may put it that way. You spur each other on to want to really improve, to move up this whole knowledge and capability ladder. And I think, yes, that is one of the things, in terms of going borderless can do and can help the ecosystems in various countries. Thank you so much for that sharing. Hye-won, in your engagements through Techstars, what do you think are important factors? I think if we want for borderless entrepreneurship to succeed, you shared a little bit about it, but I thought perhaps we could share a little bit more. What do you think are important factors beyond just having a good business idea? Hye-won, over to you.
Thank you, TJ. Yes. Well, we're witnessing the increase of borderless entrepreneurship or borderless business out there. I personally think that we still need some practices and we still need attempts to go. And from that idea, I can just point out two things in large. First is build a network. I'll just walk through, after the second point. And the second one would be create small wins. Those two are really intimately connected. So just giving you the idea, build a network is really straightforward. Unless you have, years of experience living and working like worldwide, it's not really easy to start off your business globally. I just want to be really frank with you all, because as far as I know, the world is so connected, but on the other side, as Jared and Wisnu just mentioned, even though countries in Asia, they're so different in terms of regulation, culture, maybe very subtle differences, but that subtle differences make a huge, impacts for sure. So if we're talking about the startup business or borderless entrepreneurship, those could be really critical factor for sure. So in order to smoothly, or in order to make your business and make yourself borderless, you can utilize the network within that area. No need to start from scratch to understand the whole regulations or the whole knowledge in that certain region. Because when we're talking about borderless, it's not just a single country or a single region that you are, considering. It could be like, I don't know, several countries or regions out there. Then how can we catch up with all the ideas out there? So, from that perspective, the network within that area, who would be, they would be the better version, the better one in that knowledge or in that regulation, giving you much deep or broad ideas around that area that you need to aware of if you're thinking of borderless business in, I don't know, like several areas out there. So I can see like within the chat, the attendees are just sharing their contact info and trying to come up with, I don't know, a group chat after this session. It's such a great effort. If you're thinking of your business borderless, and if you're trying to make yourself borderless entrepreneurship, it takes some time. It's not something that you can instantly get some success from there, but network is really, really one of the valuable assets if you're thinking of borderless entrepreneurship. And with that, I would say the next step would be, or the next important factor is to create small wins, meaning that sometimes we want a huge wins, a huge achievement because we want to earn money, profits out of our business, right? But back to the reality, it's not that simple and easy. So when we are talking about borderless entrepreneurship, my definition would be doing the business borderless and also operating, teaming up borderless, two things. But if we are just stick into the first, meaning that create the small wins, it's really simple approach. Going back to the borderless business, it's not against doing the business locally. Maybe validate your business working within your region. That could be a strong reference to move on to the other region, like even beyond. So from that perspective, doing your business in your local area hard, that could be like the easiest approach or very foundational approach for sure. And with that, try to approach great network within the network who are in your desirable region or market and come up with some POC, offer, doing a little test step by step and prove yourself, validate yourself that your business and your team is enough potential enough to do business in that area. So I would say create small wins is like sort of very important next factors if you're thinking of borderless entrepreneurship. So small step, maybe baby step is really, really important from this perspective.
Thank you so much, Haewon. I like what you shared, the 2 points, build networks. And I think as entrepreneurs, myself being one, really building networks, I would say continue to do that, never stop doing that, because one thing will lead to another. You never know when is that next precious conversation that you would have that will spark off a great idea. And of course, take baby steps. We all want to conquer the world, but it has to be done one step at a time. Let me move on now back to Laurent, as we wrap up even this conversation part of things. By the way, for our participants, please keep the questions coming. I think, we have got very active chat box this afternoon. So keep it going, keep the questions going so that Lena will also, be able to try to answer post as many of those questions as possible later. So Laurent, from your experience, I guess we definitely want to hear from you. What future do you see in borderless entrepreneurship? Maybe you could share with us, some of the opportunities and challenges that you may foresee in this whole, ecosystem. Over to you.
Yes, sir. Thanks, CJ. The future in borderless entrepreneurship, yes, I see it very bright. Whether you call it virtual, collaborative, gig economy, social economy, or nomad economy, it's a very, very big mega trend that is impacting every country. As I mentioned before, the COVID has considerably accelerated the digitalization. I was reading the other day a survey from McKinsey, and they were showing that actually COVID for the APAC region, for example, had accelerated the digitalization of the companies by 4 years, which is huge. So as I was saying before, digital is now the way to do business, and there will be no turning back. That's something I'm certain of. Just sharing with you a small story, which would never happen even 1 year or 1.5 years ago. I'm working for a law firm right now. I'm doing their branding, website, etc. I've never been to their office. I've never met the managing partner. I don't know him. I wouldn't be able to recognize him in the street. We're doing a video call every week. They don't put the camera, so I wouldn't be able to recognize the project team as well. But it works. It works. Project is moving forward, and what it shows to me is that clients, even if industries which were reputed to be very traditional, very tech adverse, it's working. So the trend is there. Okay. The second aspect that I see in terms of opportunities is that there's a profound aspiration, and I think that our panelists have expressed it by their testimonials in their own countries. There's a profound aspiration for personal, professional life balance amongst young generation. First of all, I have to say that most of the people who are working with me want to join Digital Mekong because they want autonomy, they want responsibility, they want freedom. And that's very, very, very important for them. So this is why they opt for our small organization. But it's not only about an aspiration from the young generation. It's also coming from the more senior professionals who are turning to entrepreneurship after they are 40, 45, 50, and live their corporate life, whether because they're fired, it happens, because they're bored, because they want also more freedom. So I see that a lot, and we've helped many of them to jump into this entrepreneur life. So it's not only the young people, but it's also the senior people. But as one of the panelists said, I don't think it's for everyone, this type of life, because even if we're talking about the digital world, it's the real world. So entrepreneurship may not be for everyone. Borderless entrepreneurship is not a one size fits all, and it's definitely not for everyone. Just a couple of examples. For an employee perspective, you will need some certain soft skills that I'm especially keen on having in my team. For example, autonomy, self-learner, empathy, and transparency. Because transparency, as one of the other panelists said, is about trust, and it's super important in this digital ecosystem. Okay, from an entrepreneur perspective, you need to be aware, and you need to be realist. You need to have the same qualities than in the real life and not in the digital life. So you need to be resilient, you need to be adaptable, reactive. You need to have more than ever, I think, empathy. What is empathy for me? It's being client-oriented and demonstrate probably a higher level of sincerity in your digital interaction, because it shows. Last but not least, of course, if you want to jump into the borderless entrepreneurship, you need to be a little bit techie. A little bit is enough, because today technology is more and more accessible and easy, but not being tech adverse. That's the only thing I would say. So to answer your question in a sort of broad sense, I would tend to say yes, borderless entrepreneurship is a profound mega trend. And for us at Digital Mekong, borderless is frictionless. So for us, it's the way to go.
Thank you so much, Laurent. Borderless is frictionless. And I think you touched on very important points that are beyond just the tech part of things, but really the soft skills, the people that are involved in this whole ecosystem, the skills that they need to have that is equally important. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. It's very interesting what our speakers have shared. I want to hand the floor over to Lena right now, because we have many questions that have been thrown up on the chat box. So Lena, I'll pass the floor over to you.
Yes, thank you, TJ, and thank you to all of the speakers. Indeed, we have a very active chat box this noon, and I would like to select the question due to time conscious and deliver it to each of the speakers, because I believe many of our audiences are inspired to become an entrepreneur, and they would like to know how our speakers is overcome the challenges. For instance, each country has different regulatory framework. So as an entrepreneur, the question is, when you decide to go borderless, how do you cope with the challenges of national regulatories in home-based countries, for instance, with labor law and salary tax systems? So to give the floor, I think, Lauren, do you want to answer the first?
I think you have to be creative. I think that I think you have to be creative. I think you have probably to have the advice or an accountant or lawyer, but in most of the country you have legal solutions. Okay. So for example, in France, we're starting to launch our European operations from France. France has created a few years ago an individual entrepreneurship status that allows a private individual to launch its own activities. And there are quite a lot of incentives. So, and this is how we're doing this right now. And if, of course, the business is going well, we're going to set up a proper company, etc. But it allows people, these kind of systems allows you to be more agile and to start without having more capital than you need, and to go fast to market. and test the water at the same time. And what's happening in France is also happening in other countries. So there are ways not to circumvent, but to be creative and agile in that sense. Borderless doesn't mean that you will bypass or circumvent a local regulation. Absolutely not. Borderless means being more agile. And in most of the countries, there is a momentum, there are incentives. Everything which is related to tech is welcome. Generally in countries, you have more and more co-working space. In Vietnam, it's been a big boom before COVID. So it's easier. It's easier than before.
Okay, thank you, Lauren. So borderless means more agile. That's maybe the key word to find the national regulatories that applies best in your countries. So the next floor, maybe Wisnu, do you want to share from Indonesia perspective and from your experience? Over to you. Thank you.
Yeah, so I don't think I have anything much to say about borderless as being across countries because we primarily focus in Indonesia alone. But I guess to what Laurent was saying, it's definitely true that it's allowing us to be more flexible and agile, I guess. And that includes in how we recruit, how we invest in office space, etc. And being, as also Lauren mentioned, is being more creative in terms of how do we make sure that these kinds of new options, like allowing the workers or employees to work out of offices in Bali, for example, or wherever they are, as a measure for us to retain workers or employees. So I think that's my point of view on how we can really utilize this new option of having remote workers, let's say.
Okay, thank you for sharing your perspective. Hyon, do you want to share your perspective? Over to you.
Yeah, I totally agree with both Laurent and Wisnu said. The keyword agile and flexibility is something that you really want to you really need to keep if you're thinking of borderless entrepreneurship. Endless learning, endless adaptation, endless flexibility, because the world is, each country has own culture, regulation, not the huge difference. Even we are just talking about very subtle difference. Still, we need to learn and we need to understand those differences. Just based on my experience, companies having such great hard skills, so many out there, but I just witnessed that some companies just fail to have engagement with certain corporations in other regions, like borderless business engagement opportunities because lack of soft skill, skills. Which just comes from insufficient practices or insufficient efforts. So I think that's like the keyword that I want to share with you. And from employee perspective, like remote working perspective, Techstars is not really a startup, but because we're working with startups, and me myself work remotely, all the employees at Techstars working remotely. Like one of the tips that I can share with you is well, I'm not really sure about the tax or regulation stuff because I'm not really part of that area, but just networking wise, we're working like collaboration wise. I guess some personal efforts or group efforts to understand each other is so required because of the time zone differences. I don't want to go deep, but macro like microaggression sometimes happens without any intention because you don't actually have any deep knowledge in other culture or other people's situations. So always trying to be respectful and trying to understand, learn the co-worker that you work with. If you are thinking that, okay, it's not working, just speak up yourself and trying to be transparent, you know, in what you are facing with. So that kind of efforts are so required if you're thinking of borderless sort of group or team. Yeah, that's what I want to share with you.
Thank you, Hewan. And the last floor, Jirut, over to you.
It's final is always the difficult one. So yeah, but I think I like the point that Laurent put in the beginning. You have to be creative. So I think at this moment, the entrepreneurs have a lot of advantage from, you know, like the ecosystem or the regulation of the country. Many countries try to put a lot of exciting package to draw in the people. So you need to be very creative and looking at the best deal for yourself. You know, like there might be something that suits you in one location. There may be something that, you know, like can bring you to the next step or connect to the different network in another location. So you need to do a lot of study before, you know, like make decision when and how. And I think I like what Hewan's mentioned as take a baby step, one step at a time. And having kind of like the borderless is mean the cost of your experimentation is lower. So you, for example, like 2 or 3 years ago, if you want to try out something, you might need to be physical, setting up something or visit or have some booth in the conference to be able to test your product or meeting people. But now everything has been able to done virtually. And the cost of doing that is much cheaper. The cost to access a new network is much cheaper. So I encourage everyone before starting thinking about go borderless. I think one baby step is you do some small experiment. Easiest way to get, you know, like knowing other people, knowing new counterparts, and and come up with some creative solution and select the best one for you. That's all for me.
Yeah, okay, thank you, Jirut. And I think we still have time to go for the second round of the questions. So, and thank you to all of the speakers who has shared the tips. I think more audiences is looking for practical approach to go borderless or to reach the customers. So the question is, in your perspective, what do you think the easiest way or practical approach to go borderless, or is it utilizing the e-commerce platform, for instance, the Lazada and Shopee is the best way to start? So maybe Jirut, you would like to continue because you were the final. I'll give you the first floor to you. Thank you.
Yeah, for me, I actually not, you know, like because as I already mentioned, I'm not the one experienced with, you know, Lazada and Shopee type of thing that much, but I may looking at them as a good example rather than, you know, like so they have many experiments that they try and they did in different locations. If you dig deeper, you will see like at each location they try lots of things, they try different at the, you know, they work differently. So for me, I think learning from them might be one of the thing that I look at that those people.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Haiwan, maybe you would like to share your perspective. Maybe this is one of the creative things to do. Over to you, Haiwan.
Not really sure it's creative or not, but just in general, I'm not really sure about the specific. I mean, it would be a little bit different approach depending on like business areas or business types. But in general, I would say the best practical way to for borderless approach would be just access some global accelerator programs like in other regions or in desirable areas that you're willing to do your business or relocate your business. It sounds like I'm just promoting Techstars program, but my intention is not. In reality, I just talked about build a network. That's like the most required, from my perspective, approach to do borderless entrepreneurship, because you need some supports from someone who know better in, let's say, other markets or other like business areas. So from that perspective, maybe joining like one of accelerator programs or any type of startup supporting program would be a great sort of stepping stone to do business borderless. I'm pretty sure that, let's say, accelerator program, it's not only offering you the financial investment, but it also giving you quite a lot of network that who can actually accelerate or make your business scale up or grow faster. So that's my point.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So the keyword is maybe you can find the accelerator program in your countries. And Wisnu, I believe you would like to say something on this. Over to you.
Sure. Yeah, I guess what Hewan mentioned is totally correct. It's definitely finding the right network for your needs. I guess the question is a bit broad, but finding the right network for your needs through things like, as she mentioned, accelerators, communities, and essentially after that would be engaging with local partners that you can trust. Yeah, I think those are the two areas. I wouldn't do things alone, I would say. So finding the right people who can connect you to the right businesses or to the right partners, that would be key. Yeah.
Okay. Yes, finding the right partners and expanding your networks. So Lauren, the final floor is yours. Over to you.
Thank you. Well, completely in line with what Ian said. I mean, the borderless entrepreneurship is not much different from real entrepreneurship, except that today the development of technology and the appetite for technology and the fact that people fear less technology makes it easier to use technology for business development. But at the end of the day, when you start your business, it's always the same. Small wins, absolutely. Networking, be super humble and really when about small wins, I would just give you one tip. Maybe is really to have one client, the first one, do it super well. Do it super well so that it comforts you in your endeavor, in your services, in the quality of your services, and build on that. Quite simple. Don't need technology for that, but technology can help. And then you will go borderless.
Sure. Thank you, Lauren, and thank you, Jiru, thank you, Wisnu, thank you, Hewan, for sharing your experience and journey in the entrepreneurships. I think due to time consciousness, I will give the floor to Julia, because Julia will have something important to be announced to our audiences. Once again, thank you, and over to you, Julia.
I hope you can hear me clearly. If you don't, just let me know. We are in the very perfect final minutes of this webinar, which I think was extremely interesting for us. Some of the keywords all speakers have highlighted are also our keywords for this webinar series. I'm thinking about adaptability, agility, constant willingness to learn, creativity too, are definitely something we keep discussing during ESI. And it's also something that we actually apply in our daily work. I mean, we are not entrepreneurs, well, TJ is, Lina and I, we are not classical entrepreneurs, but we really want and need to be entrepreneurial in what we do, because, you know, the world is changing constantly, as our speakers have reminded us. So this is just to say that many of the lessons that they actually shared, they certainly apply to entrepreneurs and startups, but they also apply to all of us that need to adapt in this constantly changing world. And at the end, I mean, ERIA, our organization, it's becoming borderless. I mean, we are all, you know, scattered around different countries and continents, but we keep, you know, innovate and learn how to work in this different reality. So these are actually very important keywords for all of us. And, you know, before closing the meeting, we also want to announce that our publication containing the key messages of the first half of this webinar series is actually out. It's available on our website, and you will actually find a lot of messages very much related to what we have been discussing today with our speakers. We will continue this conversation. We will continue to analyze these trends. So this is just the first, let's say, appetizer out of the webinar series, and more, you know, will come later in the next few months. I also would like to thank everybody for having spent our time with us until the very end. Before we close, I don't know if TJ, do you want to add something in these very last few minutes before I close?
Just a very quick, I think just a very quick thought as a fellow entrepreneur. Really, you know, use platforms like LinkedIn, connect to all the speakers here, connect to all of us, begin to grow your network, especially in this time and age when travel is limited. I think LinkedIn is a very good platform. I have gotten to know these marvelous speakers through the platform, you know, so nothing is stopping us from going borderless in that respect. Yeah, so do that. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much, TJ. I think the link has just been shared to the chat box. Anyway, you can find it on our website under publications and event reports. We will share it once again. I mean, in the next emails we are going to send to participants and registered participants. But finally, let me just thank very much again our 4 speakers for today. It has been an amazing conversation, and we really hope that we can stay in touch with you over the next few months, because we are already starting thinking about the next steps after the webinar series. And we definitely want to continue this conversation with all of you. Thank you very much once again, and see you very soon at the next episodes of our webinar series, where we are going to talk about women entrepreneurs in e-commerce. Thank you all. Thank you, Laurent, Hewon, Jirut, and Visnu. It was really great. And I think we can close the meeting now. Bye-bye. Thank you.